So, Jon Stewart recently interviewed war criminals Hillary Clinton and Condoleezza Rice on his podcast show. So, let's take a look at some of that.
Very briefly on Libya, because that was on my watch.
But this is not, again.
No, but I want to make a larger point because, Gaddafi was a bad actor. Everybody knew he was a bad actor, and he threatened to kill his people by cockroaches. The United States was actually the supporter of European countries through NATO and the Arab League, which for the very first time came and said, we want to be part of trying to protect the people of Libya. Now,
So, after the United States, in Libya, when Gaddafi was leader, the living conditions, they were way higher now. They were way higher when Gaddafi was there than they are now. And so the U.S. intervention is what is to blame for, which Hillary Clinton took a part of, is what is to blame for the situation, what the situation is now in Libya.
So I feel that particular intervention, we had certain capabilities militarily that nobody else had, which we used to assist them. But, the Emiratis were flying and the Jordanians were flying, etc. The problem, and this is where I think you make a really good point. The problem is, okay, Gaddafi's gone. His horrible prisons are emptied. What comes next?
Right.
What comes next? You're responsible for what comes next, Hillary. You overthrew Gaddafi, and a bunch of people died as a result, and the country is destroyed, and that's because of you.
What comes next?
And that's always a problem, because there's always a vacuum. Because look, dictators don't allow institutions to flourish. So when you take the dictator out, there are no institutions.
That's right.
So that's...
When you take the dictator out, the institutions that were there are gone because of regime change. But Condoleezza Rice is talking like when you overthrow a country, it's not like you did anything wrong.
But the question becomes, do you then say, let Gaddafi go ahead and kill his people because it's going to be hard afterwards? Or in our case, we thought Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. You're going to let that continue?
Yeah, you let Gaddafi do whatever he wants to do, because American intervention, it doesn't do any good. It just kills a whole bunch of people and destroys the society. In ways that are bad for the civilians, but good for defense contractors and American imperial hegemony. Let's watch a bit more of this and see if Jon Stewart pushes back against it at all.
Continue, or are you going to take him out and then do the best that you can in helping people to recover? You have to recognize that it's going to be hard once you take the dictator out. But Jon, it's a little bit of a false choice to say, well, then just leave the dictator in place, because it won't be chaotic.
Dictator in place.
It may not be chaotic.
What I'm saying is,
it may not be chaotic.
If we take
but
that
it might be
role
brutal
on,
against the people.
If we take that role on, can we sustain as a country? When you think about the Soviet Union's collapse, they overextended and they got in an arms race with us, and they had all these satellites. Are we overextending?
So Jon Stewart's only question... So the only real question Jon Stewart has is whether or not the United States is overextending. So he's fine with American imperial hegemony. He just doesn't think we should overextend. It doesn't have to ask anything about whether or not these wars were legal or anything like that. I mean, Jon Stewart, he has shown in this interview that he has lost all credibility he once had, if you ever thought he was a credible source to listen to. So, Aaron Mate responded to this on Twitter, and what he said was, the question for war criminals should not be whether their wars of aggression based on lies they repeat here and have not aged well were necessary and effective. It should be how they could still be unrepentant long after their lies have been exposed and so many died as a result. And what Jimmy Dore said was, well, good thing he's interviewing two war criminals and not a Boogaloo boy. He's not allowed to interview Boogaloo boys. Yeah, that's how it works. People want to smear Jimmy Dore for interviewing the Boogaloo boys, but the elites in the media, they get away with all sorts of stuff because that's how the media works. It manufactures consent so that voices that support American empire get heard in the media, and everyone else who questions them does not. I mean, this is what you see with Jon Stewart. He's providing cover for war criminals. He also, another thing that he did was he gave an Azov Battalion neo-Nazi an award at some event. And all the thing about him is all the elite politicians love him. The reason why his bill that defending veterans and 9/11 first responders passed. I'm in favor of giving veterans and first responders health care. But understand, the reason why that bill passed is because the elite politicians in our two major parties, they love Jon Stewart. They'll never pass something like universal health care because that goes against their interests. And anyway, Jon Stewart has exposed himself in this interview. There you have it.